A few moments ago. As Arya focused on her tasks in the office, her colleagues gathered around her desk, engaged in lively banter to break the monotony of the workday. "So, Maya, any plans for the weekend?" Oliver asked, a mischievous twinkle in his eye. Maya grinned, her excitement palpable. "Actually, Collins and I are going to that new restaurant downtown. He's been dying to try their signature dish," she replied, her voice filled with anticipation. "Collins, is that your boyfriend's name?" Arya asked, her curiosity piqued. Maya nodded enthusiastically. "Yep. Collins is the love of my life," she gushed, a dreamy smile spreading across her face. "He's not just my boyfriend, he's my partner in crime, my rock, my everything." Emma chimed in with a playful smirk. "Ah, Collins, the man of mystery. Is he finally going to reveal the secret ingredient in his famous spaghetti sauce?" she teased, earning a chuckle from Oliver. Maya rolled her eyes with mock exasperation. "You two are impossible," she teased, her laughter echoing through the office. "But seriously, Collins is amazing. He's been so supportive of my new hobby, rock climbing. He even bought me a new pair of climbing shoes." Emma raised an eyebrow in mock disbelief. "Collins, the rock climbing enthusiast? What's next, skydiving?" she quipped, her sarcasm dripping with amusement. Oliver grinned, joining in on the teasing. "Hey, if Collins is up for it, count me in. We'll have the whole office jumping out of planes in no time," he joked, eliciting laughter from the group. Arya smiled at the playful banter, grateful for the camaraderie she had found among her new colleagues. Despite only being with them for a few days, she already felt like part of the team. Their conversation was interrupted by a colleague poking his head into the office. "Hey, Arya, Mr. Richard is looking for you." "Said it's urgent," they announced, their tone conveying a sense of urgency. Arya's curiosity was piqued at the unexpected summons. "Mr. Richard? What could he need from me?" she wondered aloud, exchanging puzzled glances with Maya, Emma, and Oliver. Her colleagues shrugged in response, equally curious about the sudden request. "Guess you'll find out soon enough," Emma remarked with a smirk, her playful tone adding to Arya's sense of intrigue. Arya nodded hesitantly, her mind buzzing with questions as she made her way towards Richard's office. As Arya entered Richard's office, she was greeted with a polite smile, but something about the way he addressed her caught her off guard. There was a hint of respect in his tone that she couldn't quite place, leaving her puzzled as to why he was treating her with such deference. "Good afternoon, Arya," Richard greeted, his voice warm and courteous. "Thank you for coming. Please have a seat." Arya returned the greeting with a polite smile, taking a seat across from Richard's desk. She couldn't help but feel a sense of curiosity gnawing at her, wondering what could be so urgent that Richard had requested her presence. "I hope everything is all right," Arya ventured, her tone laced with curiosity. Richard nodded, his expression serious yet composed. "Everything is fine, Arya. I just wanted to discuss something with you regarding the upcoming exhibition," he explained, his words drawing Arya's attention. Arya's eyes lit up with excitement at the mention of the exhibition. She had been hoping for a chance to be involved, eager to contribute her skills and expertise to the event. "Oh, the exhibition. I'd love to be a part of it," she replied, her smile widening with enthusiasm. However, Richard's next words caught her off guard, causing her smile to falter. "Actually, Arya, I wanted to let you know that you don't need to worry about the exhibition. It's not within your scope of responsibilities, so you can go home early today," he explained, his tone gentle yet firm. Arya's brows furrowed in confusion, a sense of disappointment creeping into her heart. She'd been hoping for a chance to prove herself, to show that she was capable of handling important tasks within the company. But Richard's words made it clear that her involvement in the exhibition was not needed. "I understand," Arya replied, her voice tinged with disappointment. "Thank you for letting me know." As she rose from her seat to leave, Richard's next words gave her pause. "And Arya, your well-being is our top priority, so if you ever feel overwhelmed or stressed, don't hesitate to let me know. I'll make sure no one puts unnecessary pressure on you," he reassured her, his gaze sincere. Arya nodded, a sense of gratitude washing over her at Richard's concern. She knew that she was lucky to have such supportive colleagues, even if she didn't fully understand the reason behind their kindness. "Thank you, sir." "I appreciate it," Arya replied, offering him a small smile before turning to leave his office. As she made her way back to her desk, she couldn't shake the feeling of confusion that lingered in her mind. What was it about the exhibition that made him so protective of her? And why did Richard seem to care so much about her well-being? Arya left his office, and Richard couldn't help but feel conflicted about the conversation they had just had. He knew that he had just followed his boss's orders by informing Arya that she could go home early since she wasn't involved in the exhibition preparations. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being dishonest with her. Yesterday, Alexander, Arya's husband and the CEO of LH Star, had called Richard with strict instructions. He was adamant that Arya should not be working late anymore, especially on tasks that were outside her usual responsibilities. Richard had no choice but to comply with Alexander's wishes, even though he felt uneasy about deceiving Arya. As he watched her leave his office, Richard couldn't help but wonder if he was doing the right thing. He knew that he was just following orders, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was not being completely honest with her. He hoped that she would understand the reasons behind his actions, even if she never found out the truth. With a heavy heart, Richard turned his attention back to his work, pushing aside his feelings of guilt and regret. Arya returned home from work, and she was enveloped in the comforting aroma of dinner cooking in the kitchen. The sound of sizzling onions and the sight of Alexander expertly stirring a pot of noodles greeted her as she entered the dining room. She couldn't help but smile at the domestic scene before her. "Hey, love. How was your day?" Alexander asked, his warm smile lighting up his face as she joined him at the table. "It was good, thank you," Arya replied, her smile mirroring his. "How about yours?" "Busy, as usual," Alexander admitted, his tone laced with a hint of exhaustion. Despite the long day, his eyes sparkled with affection as he poured them each a glass of wine. "But I'm glad to be home with you now." As Alexander continued to cook, Arya leaned an elbow on the counter and rested her head on her hand, watching him with a soft expression. Her gaze lingered on his hands as they moved with precision, slicing onions and tomatoes with practiced ease. There was a sense of calm and contentment that washed over her as she observed him, a feeling of warmth settling in the pit of her stomach. It struck her how much her perspective had shifted in just a few days. Once apprehensive about marriage and unsure of Alexander's identity, she now found herself feeling more connected to him than ever before. Every glance, every touch seemed to deepen their bond, filling her with a sense of belonging she had never known. As she watched Alexander, a rush of affection washed over her, and she couldn't help but marvel at the man he was. How had she ever doubted that they were meant to be together? "I feel so... Is this love? 'Cause I'm loving every bit of feeling like this," Arya thought to herself. In that moment, as she looked at him with adoration shining in her eyes, she knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. With a warm smile playing on her lips, Arya leaned closer to Alexander and teased, "You know, for someone who claims to be busy, you're doing a pretty good job of playing chef extraordinaire tonight. Should I be worried that you've secretly been taking cooking lessons behind my back?" Her tone was light and teasing, laced with affection for her husband. Alexander chuckled at Arya's teasing remark and responded lovingly, "Well, my dear, I must confess that I'm just naturally gifted in all areas, including the culinary arts. No need for cooking lessons when I'm already a master chef in the kitchen." He flashed her a playful grin, his eyes twinkling with mischief as he continued, "But if you're worried about my hidden talents, don't be. I promise to share all my secrets with you, eventually." With the noodles and fried eggs finally done, Arya eagerly helped Alexander set the table, her stomach grumbling impatiently as she eyed the delicious spread before her. Still dressed in her work clothes, she couldn't contain her hunger as Alexander urged her to go change. "But I'm starving," she protested childishly, her eyes fixed on the mouth-watering meal in front of her. I can't wait to start eating this sumptuous food. Can I just eat first and change later? Alexander chuckled at her antics, unable to resist her playful charm. All right, he relented, shaking his head with amusement. But don't blame me if you get noodles all over your work clothes. Grinning triumphantly, Arya joined him at the dining table, her anticipation growing as she reached for her chopsticks. As she took her first bite, a contented sigh escaped her lips, and she knew that this meal was worth every moment of her wait. Arya felt so fulfilled each moment. Not only was her husband so good-looking, nice and hot, he was also a good cook. She really hit the jackpot. A big time. Arya eagerly began to devour her portion of food while Alexander watched her with a fond expression, his love for her evident in his eyes. So, any updates on how the revenge plan is going? Alexander asked, his curiosity piqued. Arya paused, noodles halfway to her mouth, and considered his question. Swallowing her mouthful, she replied, It's been going well so far, but I have a feeling Isabella is up to something. She's been unusually quiet lately, and that's never a good sign. I know her well enough to know when she's plotting something, and it's making me uneasy. Alexander listened attentively, his brow furrowing in concern. I trust your instincts, love, he said reassuringly. Just be careful. We'll deal with whatever Isabella throws our way, together. Arya nodded, grateful for her husband's support. She knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a team. With Alexander by her side, she felt confident that they could handle anything that came their way. As Arya and Alexander enjoyed the meal together, savoring each bite as they engaged in a light conversation, Arya shared with Alexander what Richard, her boss, had told her earlier, expressing her disappointment at not being able to participate in the upcoming exhibition. Despite her efforts to hide it, a hint of sadness lingered in her voice as she spoke. Listening attentively, Alexander reached out to gently squeeze her hand, offering her a reassuring smile. Don't be sad, love, he said softly, his eyes filled with understanding. There will be other opportunities for you to showcase your talents. Besides, your presence here with me is all that matters. Though he didn't mention it, Alexander knew that he was the one who had instructed Richard not to involve Arya in the exhibition preparations. He believed it was best for her safety and well-being, even if it meant disappointing her in the short term. As they tidied up the kitchen together, Alexander glanced over at Arya with a mischievous twinkle in his eyes. How about we cap off the evening with a movie, he suggested, a playful grin tugging at the corners of his lips. I could use some relaxation after a hectic day, and I know just the film to help us unwind. Arya's eyes lit up at the suggestion, a smile spreading across her face. That sounds perfect, she agreed eagerly, already picturing herself snuggled up on the couch with Alexander by her side. What movie do you have in mind? With a secretive grin, Alexander replied, It's a surprise, but I promise you'll love it. He reached out to take her hand, leading her towards the living room where they could settle in for a cozy movie night together. What genre is it? Arya asked. Horror. Do you like horror movies? He asked with a raised brow. Arya frowned. No, don't tell me that's the surprise you were talking about. Arya said, gasping. Was he planning not to make her sleep tonight? Why would he suggest watching a horror movie? As they settled onto the couch, Alexander turned on the TV and scrolled through their movie options. What do you feel like watching tonight, love? He asked, glancing over at Arya, since she doesn't want to watch a horror mo. Arya's face flushed. He called her a love again. Anything you want is fine with me except for a horror movie, Arya replied, snuggling closer to him. I'm just happy to be spending time with you. Alexander smiled at her words, feeling grateful for her presence beside him. Actually, there's something I wanted to talk to you about, he began, his tone serious. Arya looked up at him, concerned, flickering in her eyes. What is it? Well, my grandmother called earlier today, Alexander explained, his expression thoughtful. She's been asking us to come visit her at her house for the weekend. She really wants us to spend some time with the family. Arya's eyes lit up at the mention of Alexander's grandmother. She had always enjoyed spending time with her and cherished the opportunity to catch up with the rest of the family. I would love to go, she said, smiling. It's been a while since I've seen them. Alexander nodded, relieved that she was on board with the idea. Great. I'll come pick you up from work tomorrow and we can head over there together, he said, his tone gentle. But if you're not comfortable going, just let me know, and we can stay home instead, he said, somewhere in his head, hoping that she would say she wouldn't go. Arya shook her head, reaching out to squeeze his hand reassuringly. I'm more than happy to go, Alexander, she assured him. With a smile, Alexander pulled her into a hug, feeling grateful to have her by his side. As they settled in to watch their movie, he couldn't help but feel a sense of contentment wash over him. But at the same time, he was bothered because they were going to be spending the weekend at his grandma's house, which meant everyone was going to be there. It just didn't feel right to him to have his wife in the same space with the same people who despise him. If not for his grandmother, he wouldn't even think of staying in the same room with them. As Isabella sat at the dining table with her parents, she relayed the news of Michael's impending departure with a triumphant smile. Father, the work has been done. Michael is going out of the country tomorrow, Isabella declared with a triumphant smile. David's expression shifted to one of disappointment, which puzzled Grace and Isabella. That's good news, but make sure nothing goes wrong with this plan of yours. We've invested a lot of money in that man. The company could go bankrupt if things don't go as planned, David cautioned. Isabella frowned, feeling a sense of unease. Was her father trying to shift the blame onto her? Don't worry, Father. I will, she began, but David cut her off. His demeanor suddenly brightened. There's no need to worry. You have a rich fiancé, Isabella. Just ask Ryan for a certain amount of money to cover any losses. Unlike Ryan, Arya's husband is just a penniless bastard. There's no way he could afford such an amount if Arya were to ask, David said through gritted teeth. Isabella adopted a fake expression of sadness. Father, please don't speak ill of Arya's husband. I'm sure it's not his fault that he relies so heavily on his family's money, she said, a mischievous smile playing on her lips as she anticipated the events unfolding at work the following day. Everything seemed to be falling into place perfectly for her. The following day, 6 days to the exhibition. During lunch in the comfort area with Arya's colleagues, conversation flowed freely. So, Arya, you haven't told us your plan for the weekend? Maya inquired with a smile. Do you plan on doing anything with Alexander? Arya smiled in response. Not really. We're going to be spending the weekend at Grandma Yolanda's house, so... Maya interrupted Arya with a gasp of excitement. Oh my, a weekend at Harrington's castle. You're really in for a treat, Arya. But still, I don't think it would be like home for her. You know, there's nothing like being home and feeling free. Do you get what I mean? Emma chimed in between bites of her lunch. You haven't said anything, Mariah. Oliver nudged Mariah, breaking the moment of laughter. Mariah chuckled in response. What? What do you want me to say? She quipped. Yeah, that's right. I forgot that our team leader is a workaholic and it's obvious she doesn't have any fun plans for the weekend, Oliver teased, earning another round of laughter. Suddenly, Maya's laughter ceased. Why is Catherine glaring at Arya as if she's done something wrong? Maya asked, her brow furrowed in concern. Emma's gaze followed Maya's to where Catherine sat. That woman has nothing better to do. She can glare all she wants, Emma remarked dryly. Suddenly, a commotion erupted at the company's cafeteria entrance. The guard stood firm, addressing a woman dressed in a classy white gown who appeared to be in her 50s. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but non-company staff cannot enter, the guard explained. How dare you? Don't you know who I am? I am Mrs. James, the woman declared, her voice filled with indignation. With a sense of entitlement, she pushed past the guard and stormed into the cafeteria. Mrs. James scanned the room, her eyes filled with determination as she sought out the face of her husband's alleged mistress. She had received a call the previous day from one of her husband's employees, who claimed that her husband was having an affair. The caller had even provided photographic evidence of the woman entering and leaving her husband's office. Spotting Arya amidst the crowd, Mrs. James's anger flared. Gritting her teeth, she clenched her knuckles and marched purposefully towards Arya. The cafeteria fell silent as onlookers watched, confused by the unfolding drama and the palpable tension in the air. Mrs. James's gaze bore into Arya with a mixture of disgust and disdain, leaving no doubt as to the reason for her unexpected appearance. "Who is that woman? Did she just introduce herself as Mr. Richard's wife?" Sophia asked Catherine. Catherine smirked. "Yes, she is Mr. Richard's wife. I wonder why she's giving that look to Arya?" "It seems the truth will be revealed today," Catherine remarked, relishing the drama unfolding before her. "Are you the one called Arya?" the woman demanded, her voice sharp with accusation. Emma, Maya, and Oliver exchanged bewildered glances as they watched the tense exchange unfold. Meanwhile, Mariah stood up, her expression a mix of confusion and concern. She approached the woman cautiously, unsure of what to expect. Arya looked up at the woman with a raised brow, her expression one of confusion, tinged with apprehension. "Yes, I am. How may I?" Before Arya could finish her sentence, the woman's hand shot out, delivering a stinging slap across Arya's cheek. Gasps rippled through the cafeteria as bystanders recoiled in shock at the sudden violence. Arya's hand flew to her cheek, her eyes wide with disbelief and pain. "And why would you do that? What is wrong with you?" Mariah exclaimed, her voice tinged with disbelief and anger as she moved to confront her aunt, her heart pounding with a mixture of confusion and concern for Arya. "So, you are the woman who is having an affair with my husband. You're the one who he has been spending time with, buying expensive clothes and shoes for, huh?" "You bitch," Mrs. James said, angry. Sophia's eyes widened in shock, her hand flying to her mouth as she watched the scene unfold before her. Beside her, Catherine's smirk grew wider, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction at the chaos. It seemed her instincts were right after all. When she heard how Arya got the job, she was angry, and to her it just didn't feel right. There must have been something or someone that made her get that job. As the accusations flew, Arya's expression hardened into one of steely resolve. She squared her shoulders and met the woman's gaze with unwavering determination. "You've got the wrong person," Arya declared, her voice calm and composed despite the chaos erupting around her. "I don't know what kind of twisted game you're playing, but I can assure you, I have no involvement with your husband." "What?" Mrs. James gasped at Arya's audacity. "You really have no shame." "What the hell are you talking about?" Mariah demanded, her voice laced with incredulity. Mrs. James ignored Mariah's question, continuing her tirade. "Oh, please don't tell me you have no idea that this girl got this job because she has been sleeping with your uncle," she spat, her tone dripping with contempt. "I mean, there is no way she could obviously get this job in just a day." Ryan and Isabella entered the cafeteria, their expressions a mix of disbelief and disgust as they absorbed the accusations being thrown at Arya. Ryan's mind raced with judgmental thoughts, his disdain for Arya evident in the way he regarded her. Isabella, however, wore a contented smile, her satisfaction evident as she observed the chaos she had orchestrated. Ryan couldn't believe his ears. Would Arya really do something so cheap? The idea of Arya having an affair with Mr. Richard disgusted him. No wonder she arrived at the company with expensive dresses, bags, and a car. She even looked attractive. Did she get all those things from sleeping with her boss? Ryan couldn't help but feel repulsed. What would push her into doing that? Was it because her husband didn't have money, or was there another reason? Arya's expression remained composed, her features betraying no hint of emotion, as Richard rushed into the cafeteria with urgency. All eyes turned to him, curious about the commotion and eager to see how he would handle the situation. His presence commanded attention, and the room fell silent as people awaited his response to the chaos unfolding before him. Claudia, what sort of nonsense are you uttering here? Richard's voice boomed through the room, cutting through the tension. Nonsense? Claudia scoffed, her tone filled with indignation. You're not even showing any sign of guilt for cheating on me, she accused, her words sharp with anger. Richard's brow furrowed in confusion. What? He exclaimed, turning to Mariah for clarification. What is she talking about? He demanded. I don't know what's gotten into her. She just came here making silly accusations against one of my team members. I'm sure you have everything wrong, Aunt. Arya isn't doing anything you claim she is doing with my uncle, Mariah explained, her voice firm and resolute. That's a lie. You're obviously covering up for him because he is your uncle, Claudia retorted, her voice dripping with contempt. Richard's tone hardened as he addressed Claudia, his voice stern and authoritative. Stop all this nonsense this instant, Claudia. This is my place of work. You can't just come here causing silly dramas. There is nothing going on between me and Arya, he declared firmly. Apologize to Arya this instant for the insults, he demanded. But Claudia remained defiant. I would never, she spat, her expression unyielding. Arya's gaze flickered towards Isabella, a cold realization settling in her chest. She understood now. This was Isabella's doing all along. Arya's jaw clenched with determination. She wouldn't let Isabella get away with orchestrating this chaos, not without consequences. Alexander, who had just entered the company, immediately sensed something amiss as he noticed the unusually sparse atmosphere. It was break time, and the corridors should have been bustling with activity. As he made his way through, two workers passed by, engaged in hushed conversation. He caught snatches of their gossip, realizing it centered around a commotion unfolding in the cafeteria. You know the new employee, Arya, one of them whispered urgently. You won't believe what's happening in the cafeteria right now. Mrs. James just stormed in and slapped her, accusing her of having an affair with her husband. No wonder she got the job so quickly. She was actually having an affair with someone's husband, who happened to be the manager of the company. No wonder she got the job. Alexander's heart sank as the implications of the conversation sank in. He quickened his pace, determined to get to the bottom of the situation and defend his wife's honor. Anger burned within Alexander as he reached the cafeteria door, his footsteps heavy with purpose. Pushing it open, he strode in with determined strides, his gaze sweeping the room. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as people turned to look at him, their expressions a mix of surprise and curiosity. Some whispered among themselves, speculating on the reason for his sudden appearance, while others watched with bated breath, awaiting his next move. As he passed by Ryan and Isabella, he barely spared them a glance, his focus solely on reaching his wife. Thoughts raced through his mind, a tumultuous mix of concern for Arya and simmering rage at the accusations being hurled her way. But above all, there was a steely resolve to defend her honor and set things right. Alexander approached his wife's side, concern etched across his features. He gently asked, Arya, what's going on? Are you okay? Yes, I'm okay. I can handle this, Arya replied. Meanwhile, Richard's heart sank as he caught sight of Alexander's imposing figure. Fear gripped him, his hands trembling as he realized the potential consequences of his wife's actions. If he were to lose his job because of Claudia's rash behavior, it could spell disaster for their marriage. Turning to Claudia, Richard's voice quivered with a mix of fear and anger. What have you done, foolish woman? That's the CEO's wife. If I lose my job because of you, then consider us divorced, he said, his words laced with desperation. Claudia's face paled at Richard's words, a dawning realization washing over her. So Arya was the CEO's wife. Did that mean she had been wrong about everything? Panic welled up within her as she struggled to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Barely able to contain her emotions, Claudia turned to Arya, her voice trembling. Please, Arya, I didn't know. I'm so sorry, she pleaded, her eyes filled with regret. She didn't know what? Arya thought. Arya's expression remained impassive as she listened to Claudia's pleas. Why do you think I was having an affair with your husband? She asked calmly. her tone betraying none of the turmoil swirling within her. Claudia reached into her designer bag and retrieved her phone, displaying a message sent by an employee at the company. "I received this message with photos of you entering and leaving Richard's office," she explained, her voice shaky as she handed the phone to Arya. Claudia's breath caught in her throat as she glanced at Alexander Harrington, her eyes widening in shock. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place in her mind. If Arya was Alexander's wife, and Richard had just confirmed that Arya was the CEO's wife, then it could only mean one thing. Alexander Harrington was the CEO of LH Star. A gasp escaped Claudia's lips as the realization hit her like a ton of bricks. Everything suddenly made sense. The lavish lifestyle, the aura of authority that surrounded Alexander, it all pointed to him being the elusive CEO she had only heard whispers about. As Arya read the message, a surge of anger and annoyance coursed through her veins. Without a second thought, she stormed toward Isabella, her steps fueled by fury. Isabella stood there, a smirk playing on her lips, oblivious to the storm brewing within Arya. In one swift motion, Arya's hand connected with Isabella's cheek in a resounding slap. The sound echoed through the cafeteria, drawing the attention of everyone present. Shock and disbelief washed over the faces of onlookers as they witnessed the unexpected altercation between the two women. Arya's eyes blazed with intensity as she glared at Isabella, her expression a mixture of fury and betrayal. The room fell silent, the tension palpable as everyone awaited Isabella's reaction to the sudden assault. Isabella staggered backward, her hand flying to her cheek in disbelief. The smirk vanished from her face, replaced by a look of shock and indignation. She stared at Arya, her eyes wide with disbelief, unable to comprehend what had just transpired. The cafeteria buzzed with murmurs and whispers as the bystanders exchanged looks of astonishment. No one had expected such a dramatic turn of events, and they watched in stunned silence as the confrontation unfolded before them.
I have the privilege.
Isabella's initial reaction was one of shock and surprise. She instinctively brought her hand to her stinging cheek, feeling the sharp pain radiating from the impact. Anger and rage flickered in her eyes as she glared at Arya, her mind racing to comprehend what had just happened. The sting from the slap was almost unbearable, and Isabella could feel tears welling up in her eyes. As she held her cheeks, a wave of realization washed over her. This was the first time Arya had ever raised her hand against her, and Isabella couldn't help but feel a twinge of surprise. Arya had always been the naive, innocent one in their relationship, so where had she suddenly found the courage to confront her like this? Gathering herself, Isabella turned to face the other people in the cafeteria, her expression a mask of fake innocence and vulnerability. She wanted everyone to see Arya as the aggressor, to paint her as the victim in this situation. Tears threatened to spill from her eyes as she talked, her voice trembling with emotion. I can't believe you would do this to me," she said, her tone laced with faux innocence. I never did anything to you. Why would you attack me like that?" Her words were carefully calculated to shift the blame away from herself and onto Arya, to portray her as the innocent victim of Arya's supposed aggression. It was a manipulative tactic, but one that Isabella hoped would turn the tide of public opinion in her favor. Arya's expression would harden as she locked eyes with Isabella, her disdain for the manipulative woman evident in her gaze. She knew Isabella's true nature, manipulative, antagonistic, and willing to do anything to further her own agenda. Isabella was the antagonist in Arya's life, a constant source of turmoil and deception. What? Does she take me for a fool? She is trying to make me look like a bad person again. Arya scoffed in her thoughts. With a steely resolve, Arya confronted Isabella, her voice laced with authority and condemnation. "I know it was you," she said, her words cutting through the tension in the room. "You're the one who sent that message to Claudia, trying to ruin my reputation. You can't hide behind your lies anymore, Isabella. I won't let you get away with this." Arya's words carried the weight of truth, exposing Isabella's deceit for all to see. She was done playing Isabella's games, done allowing her to manipulate and deceive those around her. There were murmurs in the cafeteria. Ryan's reaction was that of disbelief and confusion. He had always seen Isabella as the innocent one, unaware of her manipulative nature. To him, Arya's accusations would seem unfounded, and he would struggle to accept that Isabella could be capable of such deceit. "Come on, Arya," Ryan said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Why would Isabella do something like that? She's not the type to send malicious messages to ruin someone's reputation. You're just trying to shift the blame onto her because you're angry." Ryan's words reflected his genuine belief in Isabella's innocence, as well as his loyalty to her. He saw Arya's accusations as an attempt to tarnish Isabella's image and elevate herself in the process. As Arya stood her ground, the onlookers in the cafeteria observed her with a mix of curiosity and admiration. Some nodded in agreement with her assertions, while others exchanged uncertain glances, unsure of whom to believe in the escalating confrontation. In contrast, Isabella wore a mask of false innocence, her expression carefully crafted to deceive those around her. Yet beneath the facade, a secret smirk played at the corners of her lips as she noticed the subtle looks of doubt directed towards Arya. Arya's expression hardened with resolve as she confronted Isabella. "Isabella, you know very well what you did. Sending that message to Claudia was a despicable act." "I don't know what you're talking about, Arya. Why would I do such a thing?" Isabella said with feigned innocence. "Don't play innocent with me, Isabella. You orchestrated this whole debacle to tarnish my reputation," Arya retorted. Ryan scoffed. "And what evidence do you have, Arya? Seems like you're just trying to shift blame onto Isabella to cover your own tracks," he said, giving Arya a disgustful look. "Ryan, watch your tone. You have no right to speak to my wife like that," Alexander interjected. His gaze remained steely, his aura commanding respect. The onlookers in the cafeteria couldn't help but stare at him, struck by his presence and undeniable charm. Ryan's scoff echoed through the cafeteria as he leveled a downgrading look at Alexander, questioning his authority to intervene. "And who gave you the right to intervene, huh?" he challenged. "What are you doing here, poking your nose where it doesn't belong? You're just as guilty as your wife in all of this." Inwardly, Alexander asserted his authority. "I am the CEO of LH Star, Ryan. I have every right to be wherever I please in my own company, especially when my wife's honor is at stake. Now watch your tone before you say something you'll regret." Though he wished to vocalize his thoughts, he remained composed, silently challenging Ryan with his unwavering gaze. Frustrated by Alexander's interference, Ryan's thoughts turned defensive. Who does he think he is, strutting in here like he owns the place? Just because he's from a wealthy family doesn't give him the right to butt in. He's just an empty suit, thinking he can throw his weight around. Alexander maintained his composure, refraining from revealing his identity as LH Star's CEO. Instead, he met Ryan's gaze with steely resolve. "Watch yourself, Ryan," he warned. "You may regret underestimating me." Ryan's frustration bubbled up as he processed Alexander's composed response. "Who does he think he is?" Ryan seethed inwardly. "Just because he's from a rich family doesn't mean he meant anything." Isabella's expression shifted from shock to a calculated facade of innocence, her cheeks still smarting from the slap. As she observed Alexander's interaction with Ryan, a subtle smirk tugged at the corners of her lips. What did he mean by Ryan underestimating him? Is there more to Alexander than meets the eye? Isabella's mind raced with curiosity and intrigue as she contemplated the implications of Alexander's warning. The onlookers in the cafeteria watched the drama unfold with a mixture of fascination and apprehension. "I don't think I've ever witnessed such a drama since I've been working in this company," Emma said dryly. "I know, right? But I can't deny just how dominating Arya's husband looks and sounds," Maya said, then sighed. "Can't you guys be serious for once?" Oliver groaned. "What?" Maya and Emma snapped at him. "Arya has just been accused of having an affair and you two aren't saying anything about it," Oliver replied. "Because we know it isn't the truth," Emma said, shrugging. "But what about her slapping Isabella?" Oliver said, pointing out. "I don't think Arya would accuse Isabella like that without a reason." Let's just watch how this unfolds, Maya added. Richard, observing the chaos unfold, clenched his teeth in frustration at the turmoil his wife had caused. Wondering why Alexander hadn't yet revealed his identity, Richard approached the scene with determination, intent on restoring order. I'm truly sorry for this chaos, Alexander. Please forgive me for my wife's unfounded accusations, Richard expressed. My wife would like to apologize for the accusations and the drama she has caused. She recognizes her mistake and is genuinely sorry, Richard continued, addressing Alexander, Arya, and the onlookers in the cafeteria. Turning to his wife Claudia, he urged her to apologize directly, acknowledging the need to mend the rift caused by her actions. Claudia stepped forward, her voice tinged with remorse as she addressed the room. I want to sincerely apologize to everyone for my hasty actions and unfounded accusations, she began. I realize now that I was mistaken in believing that Arya was having an affair with my husband. I was pranked by the message and I don't know who sent it. Arya, I'm truly sorry for accusing you without evidence and for hitting you. And Alexander, I apologize. This silly drama should never have happened. Her words came out in a shaky but sincere tone. Alexander's expression remained stoic as he listened to Claudia's apology. Despite his efforts to control his anger, a flicker of irritation flashed in his eyes. He made a mental note to tighten security measures within the company to prevent such incidents in the future. Without acknowledging Claudia's apology, Alexander turned to his wife, his expression unreadable. Let's go, he said tersely, his tone indicating that the matter was far from resolved. Leaving the cafeteria, Alexander's expression remained composed, but a hint of frustration lingered in his demeanor. He was determined to address the underlying issues within his company and ensure that such disruptions were not repeated. Arya followed closely behind Alexander, her gaze steely with determination. This wasn't over yet. She was resolved to make sure Isabella faced the consequences for her actions today. As Alexander strode towards the car, his usually composed expression was marred by a furrowed brow and tight jawline, his gray eyes flashing with barely contained anger. With purposeful steps, he reached for the car door, pulling it open with a forceful grip before sliding into the driver's seat. Arya's expression mirrored his intensity, her eyes wide with concern as she watched him enter the car. She entered the car and could sense his simmering frustration, and it unsettled her to see him so visibly upset. Arya began to ask, but their words overlapped as they spoke simultaneously. Are you okay? I hope you're not hurt. Alexander's concern cut through the tension, his tone softer now as he turned to Arya, his eyes still reflecting traces of his earlier anger. Arya's expression shifted from concern to a mixture of anger and embarrassment at Alexander's question. She shook her head, her eyes flashing with indignation as she replied, I'm not okay, Alexander. I'm furious and humiliated by what happened in there. To think Isabella would stoop so low. Why was she sounding surprised? It was typical of Isabella to always stoop so low. Alexander's own anger flared at Arya's words, his jaw tensing as he clenched his fists. Should I slap her in the face for you? He asked, his voice tight with restrained fury. As Alexander's offer hung in the tense atmosphere of the car, Arya's initial anger softened slightly, replaced by a sense of gratitude for his unwavering support. She reached out to place a calming hand on his arm, her touch gentle yet reassuring. Alexander appeared calm for a moment, his features softening under Arya's touch. But as he looked down at her, guilt flashed in his eyes. It's all my fault, he confessed quietly. Arya looked up at Alexander with genuine confusion, her eyes searching his face for answers. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his words than he was letting on. Why do you think it's your fault? She pressed, her voice soft yet insistent. Alexander's playful smile faltered for a moment, replaced by a fleeting expression of vulnerability, before he quickly masked it with a dismissive tone. It's nothing, cutie, he replied, his attempt at lightheartedness ringing hollow in the tense atmosphere of the car. Let's be on our way to my grandma's house. With a heavy heart, Arya reluctantly accepted his deflective response. Sensing that Alexander wasn't ready to open up about whatever burden he was carrying, she nodded silently, resigning herself to the fact that some things were better left unsaid for now. As Alexander ignited the engine and guided the car onto the highway, Arya leaned back in her seat, her mind still troubled by the unanswered questions lingering between them. The silence between them grew heavy, enveloping the car in an uneasy stillness. Arya, sensing Alexander's reluctance to engage in conversation, grew weary of the tense atmosphere. She watched him silently as he drove, his focus solely on the road ahead, his expression inscrutable. Despite her efforts to break the silence with small talk or inquiries, Alexander remained stoic, his thoughts seemingly lost in the depths of his own mind. Arya couldn't shake off the feeling of unease, wondering what thoughts occupied Alexander's thoughts, and what had caused his sudden change in demeanor. With each passing mile, Arya's eyelids grew heavy, weighed down by the exhaustion of the day's events and the lingering tension in the air. Eventually, the gentle hum of the car's engine and the rhythmic motion of the road lulled her into a state of drowsiness. Her head leaned against the window, and soon, the steady rise and fall of her breath signaled her descent into sleep. The tension in the car eased slightly with Arya's soft snores, but Alexander's expression remained distant and contemplative. Lost in his own thoughts, Alexander continued to navigate the empty highway, the passing scenery a blur of lights and shadows. Though his gaze remained fixed on the road ahead, his mind wandered, grappling with the events of the day and the implications they held for his relationship with Arya. A few hours later, as Alexander's car approached Harrington's castle, the modern yet majestic exterior came into view, illuminated by soft lights that accentuated its grandeur. The sleek lines of the architecture blended seamlessly with the lush landscape, creating an atmosphere of timeless elegance. "Hey, Arya!" Alexander's gentle voice roused Arya from her slumber, his words a soft melody against the backdrop of the car's hum. Arya blinked sleepily, her eyes fluttering open at the sight of the castle's imposing silhouette against the evening sky. Rubbing her eyes, she glanced around in momentary confusion before realization dawned on her. "How did we get here already?" she asked, her voice tinged with sleepiness. As she gazed up at the castle, her breath caught in her throat at its breathtaking beauty. "Wow, it's stunning," she murmured, her eyes tracing the intricate details of the architecture with wonder. "I can't believe we're actually here." Alexander smiled at Arya's remark about the house's beauty. "Absolutely stunning," he agreed, a hint of amusement in his voice. However, his expression shifted abruptly as he caught sight of an unexpected figure emerging from Julian's car. He frowned, and just as if they knew he was staring, Julian and Elena turned to look at him. Their eyes met. Alexander noticed Julian's lips curling up into a smirk. And Elena? What was going on? Was she also going to be there for the weekend? Who had invited her? Julian? Alexander's gaze darted from Julian to Elena. Arya, noticing all of this, looked at Alexander. His ex was there. What did that mean for him? "Arya," Alexander suddenly called. "Remember the condition I talked about?" he said. As Arya looked at Alexander, her expression was a mix of curiosity and apprehension, her brows furrowing slightly as she tried to decipher his intentions. Yes, she remembered the condition he had talked about in exchange for his help with her revenge. Although that day he hadn't explicitly told her about his condition, now that he was bringing it up, she wondered if he was finally going to reveal it. "Yes, I remember." "What about it?" Arya asked, her voice tinged with anticipation. "That is the condition," Alexander replied, his gaze shifting towards Elena, who was still staring at them. Alexander's expression remained stoic as he replied, his tone measured. "Yes, Arya, I think it's best for us to leave," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. As Alexander's words hung in the air, Arya's brows furrowed in confusion, her gaze searching his expressionless face for any hint of emotion. Why did he want them to leave after encountering his ex? Did he still harbor feelings for her? Jealousy surged within Arya, a tumult of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Arya frowned, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. Why? Is it because your ex is here? She pressed, her voice tinged with a mixture of hurt and frustration. Alexander's surprise at Arya's knowledge of his past relationship with Elena was evident in his furrowed brow and slightly parted lips. How did Arya know about his past relationship with Elena when he hadn't disclosed it explicitly? He struggled to comprehend how she had gleaned such intimate details about his personal life, especially since he had been careful not to disclose them. Alexander hesitated, his thoughts racing as he attempted to piece together the puzzle before him. Who told you about us? He pressed, his tone tinged with a mix of curiosity and concern. Arya's expression remained guarded as she met Alexander's gaze, her lips pressed into a thin line. That doesn't matter, she replied evasively. You haven't answered my question, Xander. Feeling a pang of frustration at Arya's deflection, Alexander took a moment to gather his thoughts before responding. Don't get me wrong, love, he began, his voice softening slightly as he reached out to gently touch her arm. I'm doing this because of you. I don't think you'll feel comfortable staying in the same space with Elena. Arya scoffed incredulously, her eyebrows shooting up in disbelief. Why would I feel uncomfortable around her? What, because she's your ex? She retorted, her tone laced with a hint of sarcasm. Alexander's gaze softened as he met Arya's eyes, his expression earnest. It's not just because she's my ex, Arya, he explained, his voice tinged with sincerity. There's history between us, and I don't want anything to come between us, especially not her. And if we leave, it would give her the satisfaction she wants. She would think you can't bear the sight of her with another man, and she would assume you still have feelings for her. Moreover, we're already here, and they've seen us. Instead of running from the situation, let's face it head on. Arya's voice carried a note of determination as she reasoned with Alexander, her gaze unwavering. Alexander's gaze softened with understanding as he took in Arya's words, his admiration for her strength and resilience growing with each passing moment. You're right, love, he conceded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Arya smirked. And the only way you can convince me you have no feelings for her is by staying. She said. Fine, I'll convince you, he replied. As Arya and Alexander stepped out of the car, the butler approached them with a warm smile, his demeanor poised and professional. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Harrington, the butler greeted them respectfully, his tone courteous yet welcoming. Welcome to Harrington Castle. My name is Walter, and I'll be assisting you during your stay. With a slight nod of acknowledgement, he continued, If you would allow me, I can take care of your luggage and escort you to your rooms. His offer was accompanied by a polite gesture towards the entrance of the castle, indicating his readiness to assist them with their belongings. Thank you, Walter, Alexander said, acknowledging the butler's offer with a nod of appreciation. We would appreciate your help with our luggage. It's kind of you to offer. James nodded in acknowledgement and gestured towards the entrance of the castle. Of course, Mr. Harrington. Please follow me, and I'll take care of your belongings. Please call me Alexander. It must be weird to refer to 3 men in this house by the same title, Alexander added. Walter nodded, smiling. With Walter leading the way, Alexander and Arya followed him into the castle, their footsteps echoing against the cobblestone pathway. The evening air was cool and crisp, the scent of flowers mingling with the faint aroma of wood smoke from the nearby hearth. As they entered the castle, Arya's eyes widened in awe at the opulence that surrounded her. The grandeur of the foyer took her breath away, from the intricately carved marble columns to the sweeping staircase that ascended to the upper levels of the castle. Wow, Arya murmured, her voice filled with wonder as she took in her surroundings. Taking Arya's hand in his, Alexander led her up the steps of the castle as they followed behind Walter, their silhouettes illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns that lined the pathway. With each step, Arya's apprehension grew, the weight of unanswered questions pressing down on her shoulders. Arya's mouth was left agape as they continued walking further into the castle. "It's like an actual castle. It's a castle," Arya commented. Alexander smiled at Arya's reaction, his hand tightening around hers in a silent gesture of reassurance. "Welcome to Harrington Castle," he said, his voice tinged with pride. "I hope you'll feel at home here." As Arya and Alexander stood in the doorway of their guest quarters, Walter, the butler, came to a stop before a particular door and turned to face them, addressing them with a respectful tone. "Mr. Alexander, Mrs. Harrington, this is your room for the duration of your stay," Walter said, gesturing towards the door. "I hope you'll find it to your liking. If there's anything you need, please don't hesitate to ask. I'll go fetch your belongings and take them up shortly. Dinner will start at 8 p.m. With a polite nod, Walter excused himself and left to retrieve their luggage, leaving Arya and Alexander alone in the hallway. Alexander opened the door to the room, and Arya's eyes widened as she took in the sight of the luxurious guest room before her. The plush furnishings and elegant decor spoke of the castle's opulence, and for a moment, she forgot her earlier unease in the excitement of their surroundings. "Wow, this is incredible," Arya exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she took in the room. However, as she turned to Alexander, her expression suddenly changed, her eyes widening in realization. "Wait, are we going to share the same room?" she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Despite being married and living together, the idea of sharing a room with Alexander felt strangely intimate and unfamiliar. They had never shared a room before. Now, faced with the prospect of sharing a bed with him, Arya's mind raced with a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. On one hand, she knew that it was perfectly natural for married couples to share a room, and she didn't want to make a fuss over something so trivial. But on the other hand, the thought of sleeping beside Alexander, of feeling his presence so close to her own, sent a shiver of anticipation down her spine. As she glanced at the large, inviting bed that dominated the room, Arya's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She couldn't deny the undeniable attraction she felt towards Alexander, nor could she ignore the flutter of excitement that stirred within her at the thought of being so intimately close to him. Alexander couldn't help but smirk at Arya's reaction, finding her sudden panic endearing. "Yes, we are sharing a room together during our stay here," he confirmed, his tone teasing. Arya's face flushed at the thought, her mind racing with apprehension. "No, we can't," she protested, her voice rising slightly in embarrassment. Alexander raised a playful eyebrow at Arya's reaction, his smirk widening. "What? You want us to sleep in different rooms, so everyone will start becoming suspicious?" he teased. "Besides, you were the one who insisted we stay here. Are you going to go back on your words now?" Arya bit her lip, feeling a mixture of frustration and embarrassment wash over her. She couldn't believe she had let Alexander's teasing get to her like that. Of course they were married, and it was only natural for them to share a room, but the thought of being in such close proximity to him, especially with the unresolved feelings she harbored, made her feel vulnerable. "I won't go back on my words," she stated firmly, trying to push aside her unease. "It's no big deal if we share a room and a bed together. It's just for this weekend." Deep down, however, Arya knew that her words were only half-truths. Yes, they were married, and yes, sharing a room was a normal occurrence for couples, but their relationship was far from conventional. They had met under the circumstances of an arranged marriage, and while they got along well and were on good terms, neither of them had confessed their true feelings for one another. Arya couldn't deny the undeniable attraction she felt towards Alexander, nor could she ignore the flutter of butterflies in her stomach whenever he was near. But she was afraid of losing control of her emotions, afraid of what might happen if she allowed herself to succumb to the feelings she had been suppressing for a while. A few moments later, Walter had delivered their luggage to the room, and now Arya was getting ready for dinner. As Arya stood before the mirror, a soft glow of anticipation lighting up her features, she meticulously adjusted her makeup, ensuring every detail was perfect for the evening ahead. With a final sweep of her hair, she turned to glance at Alexander, who seemed unchanged from earlier. Are you not going to change your outfit? Arya inquired, a hint of amusement dancing in her eyes as she took on the same clothes he had been putting on throughout the day. That's unlike him. He doesn't do that when we are at home, Arya thought. Alexander glanced down at his clothing, his expression sheepish. I didn't think it mattered, he admitted, scratching the back of his head. The truth was that he didn't want to dress so as to let his father have something to say. Are you done? Can we go now? Alexander asked eagerly. Arya chuckled at his impatience. Yes, I'm ready, she replied, smoothing down her dress. Thank goodness. Because I'm famished, Alexander exclaimed, his enthusiasm evident as he led the way towards the dining room. She laughed and shook her head before walking towards the door. Alexander followed suit, opening the door for her with a gallant flourish, and they stepped out together into the corridor, ready to join the others for dinner. As they made their way through the corridors of the castle, Arya couldn't help but notice the absence of the other family members. How come there's no sight of the others yet? She asked, curiosity tinging her voice. Alexander shrugged, glancing around the empty hallway. I'm not sure. Maybe they're already in the dining room, he speculated, leading Arya towards their destination. As Arya and Alexander descended the grand staircase, the opulence of the castle's dining room unfolded before them. The room was adorned with intricate tapestries, ornate chandeliers, and polished wooden furniture, exuding an air of old-world elegance. The long dining table was set with fine china, sparkling crystal glasses, and flickering candlelight, casting a warm glow over the room. A large fireplace crackled at one end of the room, adding to the cozy ambiance. Scarlett's scowl was unmistakable as she noticed Alexander's arrival, her disapproval evident in the tightening of her lips. Jessica, on the other hand, greeted them with a warm smile, her eyes twinkling with genuine pleasure. It's so good to see you two again, Jessica exclaimed, her voice going across the room. You both look lovely. Arya returned Jessica's smile, feeling a sense of warmth and acceptance in her presence. She exchanged a quick glance with Alexander before they made their way to the table. Arya stifled a chuckle at Jessica's subtle dig at Elena, her lips curving into a polite smile. Thank you, Jess, she replied. Alexander gallantly guided Arya to her seat, pulling it out with a chivalrous flourish. As Arya gracefully took her seat, Alexander's gentlemanly gesture did not go unnoticed, eliciting a soft smile of gratitude from her. Thank you, she murmured appreciatively, her eyes briefly meeting his with affection before she settled into her chair. Meanwhile, Elena's disdain was palpable as she rolled her eyes in response to the exchange between Alexander and Arya. Suppressing a sigh, she decided to interject with a faux compliment, laced with underlying sarcasm. How charming, Alexander, she remarked, her tone dripping with insincerity. Always the gallant gentleman, aren't you? Alexander decided to ignore her. Across the table, Julian's greeting to his half-brother Alexander carried a thinly veiled disdain, as he struggled to mask his true sentiments beneath a veneer of civility. Ah, Alexander, he began, his voice tinged with false warmth. So glad you could join us, he said, his words laced with subtle condescension, betraying the strained relationship between the two brothers. Suddenly the echo of Grandma Yolanda's walking stick was heard, and they all turned in the direction of the sound. Grandma Yolanda appeared in the dining room entrance, and behind her was Gabriel. Grandma Yolanda's smile brightened as she took in the faces of the people in the dining room, from Jessica, to Mason, to Ethan's children, to Ethan, to Arya and Alexander. The sight of Arya and Alexander made her eyes glint with happiness, but her expression turned to a frown as her gaze then landed on Elena. What is that woman doing here? She asked, her voice carrying a note of disapproval. Grandma Yolanda's entrance sent a ripple of unease through the room, her disapproving gaze fixed firmly on Elena. Julian's expression tightened imperceptibly, his attempts to maintain composure betraying a flicker of discomfort at his grandmother's abrupt inquiry. Clearing his throat, Julian rose from his seat, a strained smile plastered on his face as he stepped forward to greet Grandma Yolanda. Grandmother, he began, but Grandma Yolanda remained unmoved, her eyes narrowing as she fixed her gaze on Elena once more. "Julian," she said, her tone sharp with disapproval, "I asked you a question. What is that woman doing here?" Scarlett, Julian's mother, looked at her son with concern, hoping he wouldn't say anything to anger his grandmother. She also didn't understand why Julian would bring Elena, especially after their tumultuous history. She frowned as she glanced at Elena. Gabriel, Julian's father, regarded his son expectantly, waiting for him to provide an explanation for Elena's presence. Meanwhile, Ethan maintained an expressionless face, his mind preoccupied with his own thoughts. Elena's cheeks flushed crimson under Grandma Yolanda's scrutiny, her discomfort evident as she shifted in her seat, a forced smile playing on her lips. I was invited by Julian," she stammered, her voice faltering slightly as she struggled to maintain her composure. Grandma Yolanda's lips curled into a sneer, her displeasure palpable as she turned her attention back to Julian. "Invited her, did you?" she remarked, her voice dripping with scorn. "And what precisely is your intention, Julian Harrington, bringing that woman into our home?" Julian's jaw clenched visibly. "Grandmother, Elena is my girlfriend, and she is a guest in our home," he replied tersely. "I would appreciate it if you would show her the same courtesy you extend to our other guests." Alexander shook his head with a grin. "Ha, you've made everything too obvious, Julian," he thought to himself. "Other guests?" Grandma Yolanda said, her tone laced with disdain as she took slow steps towards him with her walking stick, her eyes giving him a threatening look. "You dare bring a woman like her into my home, Julian? Have you no respect for your family's honor?" Gabriel's disapproving gaze lingered on his son, a rare display of dissatisfaction that spoke volumes of his disappointment. It was a silent reproach, conveying a depth of disapproval that Julian had seldom encountered from his father before. "Mother, I'm sure Julian would never do anything to hurt our family's honor," Scarlett interjected, her voice tinged with a protective instinct as she sought to defend her son. "Unlike some people," she added with a disdainful glance in Alexander's direction, her words dripping with contempt. Arya's brow furrowed in concern as she observed the disdain directed towards Alexander from nearly every member of the Harrington family, except for Jessica and Grandma Yolanda. It was a stark reminder of the isolation and rejection she faced within her own family, a sentiment that resonated deeply with her own experiences. As she contemplated the parallels between their situations, Arya couldn't shake the unsettling realization that Alexander and she had both endured similar treatment at the hands of those they considered family. The sense of betrayal cut deep. The thought of Elena's possible betrayal echoed ominously in her mind, stirring up memories of her own past heartbreaks. Could it be that Elena had cheated on Alexander with Julian, just as Ryan had betrayed her with Isabella? The thought sent a shiver down her spine, her gaze flickering between Elena, Julian, and ultimately, Alexander. "Mother, Scarlett is right. You know Julian has never done anything to disrespect our family's honor," Gabriel interjected, his voice tinged with a note of pleading as he attempted to diffuse the tension. Julian's mind raced as he sought a way to salvage the situation while keeping Elena at dinner. He knew he had to tread carefully to appease his grandmother without outright dismissing Elena. With a forced calmness, Julian addressed Grandma Yolanda, his tone measured yet pleading. "Grandmother, I understand your concerns, but Elena is my guest, and I would like her to stay for dinner," Julian said, his voice tinged with urgency. "Please, let us put aside any differences for the sake of family unity." Grandma Yolanda's stern gaze softened slightly as she shifted her attention to Arya and Alexander, her expression softening with a hint of understanding. Though her disapproval of Elena remained evident, Grandma Yolanda recognized the need for peace within the family, if only for the evening. "Just for tonight," she conceded reluctantly, her tone carrying a note of resignation. "Let us set aside our differences and enjoy a peaceful dinner together as a family." As Grandma Yolanda settled into her seat with a sense of quiet satisfaction, Gabriel took his place beside her, his expression calm yet watchful. Julian's mischievous grin lingered as he sat down, a glint of anticipation dancing in his eyes. The servants moved gracefully around the table, serving each guest with precision and efficiency. Plates laden with delectable dishes were placed before them, the aroma of savory meats and rich sauces filling the air. With a gentle clink of silverware against porcelain, the family members began to partake in the feast before them. Grandma Yolanda's gaze softened as she regarded Arya, her curiosity piqued by the presence of the newest addition to the family. Clearing her throat, she addressed Arya with a warm yet inquisitive tone. "My dear, forgive me for prying, but I can't help but wonder how you're finding married life with my wayward grandson," Grandma Yolanda said, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Is he treating you well? I do hope he's not causing you any trouble." Alexander chuckled softly at his grandmother's question, his eyes sparkling with amusement as he exchanged a knowing glance with Arya. Despite the mischievous twinkle in his eyes, there was an underlying warmth and affection in his response. "Oh, Grandma, you know me too well," Alexander replied with a grin, his tone light-hearted yet genuine. "I may have my moments, but I promise I'm doing my best to be a good husband to Arya." He then reached for Arya's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze as he met her gaze with a tender expression, silently reassuring her of his sincerity. Arya's heart swelled with warmth at Alexander's sincere words and the reassuring squeeze of his hand. Meeting Grandma Yolanda's gaze with a soft smile, she replied honestly, her voice filled with genuine affection for her husband. "Grandma Yolanda, Alexander has been nothing but wonderful," Arya said, her tone earnest. "He may have his playful moments, but he's always considerate and caring towards me. I couldn't have asked for a better husband." Elena's expression remained carefully composed, but a flicker of annoyance flashed in her eyes at Arya's heartfelt words. Beneath the facade of indifference, there was a hint of envy as she observed the genuine affection between Arya and Alexander. Despite her best efforts to conceal her emotions, Elena's mask slipped momentarily, revealing her lingering bitterness. Grandma Yolanda observed the interaction between Arya and Alexander with a newfound sense of warmth and approval. A faint glimmer of satisfaction sparked in her eyes, hinting at a shift in her perception of her grandson. Despite her initial reservations, witnessing Alexander's playful yet sincere response and the genuine affection between the newlyweds stirred a sense of hope within her. It was a small but significant sign of growth and maturity in Alexander, prompting Grandma Yolanda to entertain the possibility that perhaps, just perhaps, he was indeed capable of change. Clearing her throat, Grandma Yolanda turned her attention back to Arya, her tone now tinged with genuine interest and curiosity. "Arya, my dear, I heard you're working at LH Star," she began, her eyes twinkling with intrigue. "How is your job going there? I imagine it must be quite exciting." Gabriel's curiosity was piqued as he listened to Grandma Yolanda's question, his gaze shifting to Arya with keen interest. Scarlet raised a brow as she glanced at Arya. Julian, meanwhile, remained silent, his eyes flickering with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension as he awaited Arya's response. Ethan, however, reacted differently. His brows furrowed slightly as he listened to Grandma Yolanda's question, his gaze narrowing in suspicion as he studied Arya. There was a guardedness in his demeanor, a sense of wariness that betrayed a deeper curiosity about Arya's involvement with LH Star. Arya's eyes brightened with genuine enthusiasm as she responded to Grandma Yolanda's question. "Thank you for asking, Grandma Yolanda," she began, her voice infused with pride. "Working at LH Star has been an incredible experience so far." Grandma Yolanda's smile widened at Arya's response, a sense of pride evident in her gaze as she regarded her granddaughter-in-law. "I'm delighted to hear that, Arya," she replied, her tone warm and approving. A smile tugged at Gabriel's lips as he stared at Arya. The conversation lulled and the family resumed eating. "Any plans on blessing me with some great-grandchildren soon?" Grandma Yolanda inquired with a playful smirk. Grandma Yolanda's unexpected question pierced the air, causing Arya to choke in surprise. With wide eyes and a coughing fit, she struggled to regain her composure, her cheeks flushed in embarrassment as all eyes turned to her. Elena, her face reddening from obvious anger, abruptly dropped her spoon on the plate, her envy evident as she glanced at Arya. Children? She thought, scoffing at the notion. Beside Arya, Alexander couldn't suppress a chuckle at his grandmother's boldness, though a hint of color crept into his own cheeks. Grandma Yolanda's expression softened with concern as she observed Arya's choking, her maternal instincts kicking in. "My dear, are you all right?" she asked, her voice laced with genuine worry. "Alexander, get her some water, quickly." Alexander nodded in response to his grandmother's directive, immediately rising from his seat to fetch a glass of water for Arya. With practiced ease, he swiftly returned to her side, offering her the glass with a reassuring smile. "Here you go, love," Alexander said gently, his tone filled with genuine concern as he handed Arya the glass of water. Arya gratefully accepted the water, taking a few sips to soothe her throat before offering a nod of thanks to Alexander and Grandma Yolanda. "Thank you," she murmured softly, her embarrassment slowly fading as she regained her composure. With a smirk, he reached out to gently pat Arya's back, offering her a reassuring smile as she recovered from her surprise. "Oh my, why would she ask such a question in front of everyone?" Arya muttered to herself, her embarrassment palpable. "Don't worry, Grandma," Alexander interjected with a playful grin, coming to Arya's defense. "My wife and I are working on it." His tone was light-hearted, yet tinged with warmth as he exchanged a knowing glance with Arya, silently reassuring her. What does he mean by that? Are we really going to do what is necessary? Arya thought. Jessica chuckled softly at Grandma Yolanda's question, her eyes crinkling with amusement as she glanced at Arya and Alexander. "Oh, Grandma, you're never short on surprises, are you?" she remarked with a playful grin. "I'm sure, like my brother said, they're working on it. Be expecting another great-grandchild." The dining room exuded an air of warmth and contentment, with laughter and cheerful conversation filling the space, largely attributed to Alexander's charismatic presence. However, despite Julian's best efforts to disrupt the harmony by bringing Elena in, Alexander remained seemingly unaffected, maintaining his affable demeanor and effortlessly deflecting any attempts to tarnish his image. Julian couldn't comprehend why no one seemed to find fault in Alexander tonight. Why was his father keeping quiet? He had hoped that Elena's presence would incite some reaction from Alexander, perhaps revealing cracks in his facade or exposing hidden vulnerabilities. Yet, to Julian's frustration, Alexander appeared unfazed, continuing to bask in the glow of familial adoration without a hint of discomfort or unease. Does he no longer have feelings for Elena? His gaze shifted to Alexander, who continued to engage in cheerful banter with Grandma Yolanda, seemingly oblivious to the tension brewing around him. Julian's jaw clenched with frustration as he pondered whether Alexander's indifference to Elena's presence was genuine or merely a pretense. Was Alexander truly as impervious as he seemed? Or was his nonchalant demeanor merely a facade to mask deeper insecurities? "I hope you're enjoying the show, Elena," Julian whispered, his voice low and menacing. "But remember, we have a plan, and you'd better play your part well." Elena's eyes widened in alarm as she felt Julian's grip tighten on her lap, a shiver of fear coursing through her. She quickly masked her discomfort with a forced smile, nodding subtly in acknowledgement of Julian's warning. As the tension simmered beneath the surface, Julian contemplated his next move with a calculated intensity. He knew that provoking Alexander was key to achieving his goals, but he had to tread carefully to avoid raising suspicions among the rest of the family. With a subtle shift in his demeanor, Julian leaned in closer to Elena, his voice low and menacing as he whispered into her ear. "Play your part well, Elena," he instructed, his tone laced with thinly veiled threat. "We need to incite a reaction from Alexander tonight, no matter what it takes." Elena nodded imperceptibly, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and anticipation. She knew that Julian's plan hinged on her ability to provoke Alexander, and she was determined to see it through to the end. Meanwhile, Alexander continued to engage in lively conversation with Grandma Yolanda, seemingly unaware of the scheming unfolding around him. His easygoing demeanor belied the storm brewing beneath the surface, as he grappled with the conflicting emotions stirred up by Elena's unexpected presence. Suddenly, Julian's voice cut through the air like a knife, his words dripping with venom as he addressed Alexander with a calculated smirk. "Tell me, brother," he began, his tone deceptively casual. "How does it feel to know that your ex-girlfriend is sitting just a few feet away from your wife?" The question hung in the air like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over the once cheerful atmosphere of the dining room. All eyes turned to Alexander, waiting for his response, as the tension in the room reached a palpable crescendo. Arya's gaze narrowed at Julian's question. Alexander's jaw clenched with barely suppressed anger, his fists tightening involuntarily beneath the table as he struggled to maintain his composure. The mention of Elena's name dredged up painful memories of betrayal and heartache, threatening to unravel the carefully constructed facade he had worked so hard to maintain. With a forced calmness, Alexander met Julian's gaze with steely determination, his voice steady despite the turmoil raging within him. "I have no interest in discussing my past relationships, Julian," he replied evenly, his words laced with a hint of warning. "Especially not at the dinner table." Julian's smirk widened at Alexander's thinly veiled threat, a spark of satisfaction igniting in his eyes as he realized he had struck a nerve. "Touchy subject, isn't it?" he taunted, his tone dripping with mockery. "But then again, we all know you've never been one for emotional honesty, Alexander." The tension in the room reached a boiling point as the simmering animosity between the two brothers threatened to erupt into open conflict. But before either of them could say another word, Grandma Yolanda intervened, her voice cutting through the chaos with a steely authority. "That's enough, Julian," she admonished, her tone firm and uncompromising. "We will not have any more of this foolishness at the dinner table. Show some respect for your brother and his wife." Julian bristled at his grandmother's reprimand, his pride wounded by her censure. With a reluctant nod, he fell silent, though the fire of defiance still burned brightly in his eyes. Gabriel's frown deepened as he observed Julian's behavior, a sense of concern gnawing at him. Despite his fondness for Julian, he couldn't ignore the series of questionable decisions his son had made that evening. Clearing his throat, Gabriel addressed Julian with a measured tone, masking his inner turmoil. "Julian," he began, his voice tinged with a note of caution, "how is your collaboration with LH Star progressing?" His question was deliberate, aimed at steering the conversation towards a more positive topic in an effort to alleviate Grandma Yolanda's disappointment and restore her pride in Julian. Gabriel hoped that by highlighting Julian's professional achievements, he could shift the focus away from the recent discord. Julian leaned back in his chair, a confident smile playing on his lips as he outlined his vision for a partnership with LH Star. "I've been in talks with the executives at LH Star, and I'm quite confident that we can secure a mutually beneficial collaboration," he declared, his voice brimming with assurance. Ethan raised an eyebrow, his gaze flickering with hidden amusement as the opportunity arose to further his own agenda. "Eager to jump into a partnership, aren't you, Julian? Let's see how that works for you, because I'm sure it will not while I'm here." Ethan mused silently, his eyes flickering with a hint of mischief. He knew better than to trust appearances in the cutthroat world of business, where alliances could shift in the blink of an eye. "I'll make sure Father regrets not giving me the duty as the eldest son to get a partnership for the company," he thought to himself. Across the table, Alexander couldn't help but scoff at Julian's boldness. "You're putting an awful lot of faith in this partnership, Julian," he thought, his tone laced with skepticism. Julian turned to look at him with a raised brow. "And what does that mean?" he asked. Alexander feigned oblivion. "Are you talking to me?" Alexander asked with an innocent look. Julian couldn't help but clench his fist. He knew Alexander was playing with him and he didn't like that. Meanwhile, Gabriel, their father, ignoring their exchange of words, nodded approvingly at Julian's proposal. "An excellent idea, my boy," he chimed in, his pride evident as he looked upon his favored son. He had always believed in Julian's potential to succeed, and the prospect of a partnership with LH Star seemed to validate his unwavering confidence in his second son. "But do you really think LH Star will make it to the exhibition?" Gabriel asked, his words having a hidden meaning, as if he knew something about the exhibition that Julian had no idea about. Julian smiled. "Let's see how it goes, father. What do you think? Will LH Star really make it? Would their design be the best?" he asked. Gabriel's lips curled up into a sly smile. "Will you believe me if I say I'm not sure about their design being the best?" he replied. Alexander's expression darkened subtly, a flicker of concern crossing his features as the conversation turned towards his company, LH Star. He listened intently, his brow furrowing slightly, as his father's tone hinted at uncertainty about LH Star's prospects. It was obvious that Alexander didn't like where the discussion was heading. While they were unaware of his role as the CEO, the implicit doubts about LH Star's success didn't sit well with him. Gabriel's tone suggested a level of confidence in his skepticism, leaving Alexander wary of potential threats to the company's reputation. Julian nodded. "I'll do everything to get this partnership, father." Scarlett's gaze softened as she turned towards Julian, a proud smile gracing her lips. "Julian, my dear, you've always been so ambitious and driven," she remarked, her tone warm with admiration. "I have no doubt that your partnership with LH Star will be a resounding success. You've always had a knack for seizing opportunities and making the most of them." Then, with a subtle shift in her demeanor, Scarlett's expression grew cold as she glanced at Alexander. "Unlike some," she continued, her voice taking on a hint of disdain, who seemed content to coast through life without any real ambition or direction. "If only he had even a fraction of your drive, Julian, perhaps he wouldn't be in the mess he's in now." Arya raised a brow as she looked at Scarlett. What does she mean by that? It was obvious she was indirectly throwing insultive words at Alexander, but what she couldn't understand was why Alexander wasn't saying anything. Well, if he wouldn't say anything, then she would. Just as Arya was about to respond, Grandma Yolanda intervened, her voice cutting through the tension with a steely authority. "That's enough, Scarlett," she admonished, her tone firm and uncompromising. "We will not have any more of this foolishness at the dinner table. Show some respect for your stepson and his wife." Scarlett's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as Grandma Yolanda's admonishment pierced through the tension. A flicker of fear danced in her eyes as she realized the gravity of her misstep. Hastily, she lowered her gaze, unable to meet the disapproving stare of her mother-in-law. Feeling the weight of Gabriel's gaze upon her, Scarlett shifted uncomfortably in her seat, a silent apology forming in her eyes. She knew she had overstepped her bounds, and the disappointment reflected in Gabriel's expression only served to deepen her sense of remorse. With a mixture of disappointment and disapproval etched on her face, Grandma Yolanda rose from her chair, expressing her disdain for the situation. "I've lost my appetite," she announced firmly, her tone tinged with frustration. "I think it's best if I retire to my bedroom." Gabriel, sensing the need to intervene, shot his wife a disapproving glare before rising from his seat to assist his mother. "Mother, please allow me to assist you," he urged, his tone tinged with concern. But Grandma Yolanda, refusing to be treated like a helpless old woman, waved him off with a firm gesture. "Sit down, Gabriel," she commanded sternly, her eyes flashing with determination. "I can manage perfectly well on my own." Gabriel swallowed a lump in his throat, noticing the disappointment etched in his mother's voice. "Good night, Arya, Jessica, and Mason. I can see the three of you are the only sensible people in this room," Grandma Yolanda said. Arya watched as Grandma Yolanda made her exit, the sound of her walking stick echoing softly in the dining room. The atmosphere remained tense, the lingering effects of Scarlett's words casting a shadow over the family dinner. Jessica, unable to contain her disdain for her mother Scarlett's behavior, offered a sarcastic remark. "Well done, Mother," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. You've really outdone yourself this time. Ruining the mood seems to be your specialty. Meanwhile, Gabriel, feeling the weight of the situation, addressed Scarlett with a gentle but firm tone. Scarlett, we need to talk, he began, his expression serious. Your behavior tonight was unacceptable. We'll discuss this further once we retire from the room. Gabriel's words carried a sense of disappointment as he struggled to reconcile Scarlett's actions with the values he held dear. He left the dining room and Scarlett followed behind him. Why does she have to be blamed for this? Turning to her son, Mason. Come on, Mason, Jessica said, her voice tinged with annoyance. Dinner is over. Let's go to your room. Mason bid his goodnights with innocent enthusiasm, prompting warm smiles from Gabriel, Arya, and Alexander. Good night, Mason, Gabriel replied. Arya smiled warmly at Mason. Good night, Mason. Sleep well, she said, her voice filled with affection. Good night, champ, Alexander replied, returning Mason's enthusiasm with a genuine smile. Mason nodded eagerly before darting off towards his mum. Okay, uncle? Don't forget what you promised me about tomorrow, he called out before disappearing from view. Arya's smile faltered as her eyes locked with Elena's, and Arya couldn't help but roll her eyes in exasperation, knowing all too well the tension that simmered between them. Despite her annoyance, a smirk tugged at Elena's lips, hinting at her underlying intentions. About the night after your wedding, I'm so sorry you had to see that, Elena suddenly said, her tone laced with insincerity. Arya's frown deepened as she regarded Elena, her tone guarded. And what did I see? She inquired, her voice tinged with suspicion, unwilling to be drawn into Elena's game. Elena's feigned expression of sadness only fueled Arya's irritation, her patience wearing thin at Elena's mocking tone. Elena's words cut deep, and Arya fought to maintain her composure as the past was dredged up in such a callous manner. You know, I didn't mean to steal your husband away from you on the night of your honeymoon, but I also didn't expect him to come running to me after just one call, Elena taunted, her voice dripping with sarcasm. She then turned to Alexander with a sly grin, seeking confirmation of her words. Isn't that right, Alex? With a raised eyebrow and a wry smile, Arya simply said, Oh, Elena, how could I forget such a riveting tale? It's not every day one gets to witness a fictional drama unfold before their eyes. But really, I thought you were too busy playing the role of Julian's girlfriend to reminisce about your imaginary rendezvous with my husband. Elena's face flushed with anger, her composure crumbling beneath Arya's biting sarcasm. Her eyes narrowed into slits, and her lips pressed into a thin line as she struggled to maintain her facade of poise. In a moment of heated indignation, Elena's mask of civility slipped, and she retorted sharply. You may find this amusing, Arya, but let's not pretend you're oblivious to the truth. Denial doesn't change the reality of the situation. Elena's words dripped with venom as she sought to provoke Arya further. I'm sure he hasn't told you yet what made him come to me, has he? She taunted, her voice laced with malice and a hint of triumph. As Arya stood her ground against Elena's venomous words, her resolve remained unshaken. He has, and I don't care. You're his past, and his past you'll remain, she retorted firmly, her gaze unwavering as she turned to Alexander with a sweet smile. My love, I'm tired. Let's call it a night, and leave those who want to dwell in drama. Alexander not only smiled at his wife, but also relished her poised response to Elena's provocation. We've had enough drama for the day. Of course, let's retire to our bedroom and leave those who want to stir up trouble, he said, sealing his words with a tender kiss on Arya's lips. With synchronized movements, they rose from their seats, and Alexander swept Arya up in a bridal-style carry, a display of affection and unity. Their departure, witnessed by Elena, Julian, and Ethan, left Elena seething with jealousy and rage. In a fit of fury, Elena abruptly stood up from her chair, her violent movement causing her hair to sway wildly. Without a word, she stormed out of the dining room, with Julian following closely behind, his anger directed not at Alexander and Arya, but at Elena herself. Meanwhile, Ethan, left alone in the dining room, burst into laughter at the unfolding drama. "Yes, you should all be distracted from the storm that's about to brew," he remarked with amusement. Julian's violent reaction to Elena's actions revealed the depth of his frustration and anger. He grabbed Elena's arm forcefully, pulling her towards him and gripping her with a fierce intensity. With a venomous glare, he confronted her, his eyes blazing with fury as he struggled to contain his rage at her reckless behavior. "My dear Elena, what were you thinking?" Julian's voice cut through the tension, filled with a mix of anger and disappointment. "Do you want to ruin everything we've been working towards?" His grip on her arms tightening, his eyes boring into hers with a fierce intensity. Elena winced at the force of Julian's grip, her own anger momentarily overshadowed by his furious glare. "I was just trying to get under Arya's skin," she protested, her voice strained with pain. "I didn't think it would escalate like this." Julian's voice dripped with disdain as he berated Elena for her reckless actions. "Trying to get under Arya's skin?" he scoffed. "How stupid can you be? We were in that room for a long time, and you couldn't even utter any words like we planned. And then you had to go and do that after my grandma left? And to even think that your words didn't work on either of them." His tone turned icy as he delivered his ultimatum. "Let me remind you, Elena, that if you ruin my plans, I'll let the world know of your crimes. And don't forget the damage it will bring to your career. Not only would you lose your source of income, you would also be put behind bars." Elena's eyes widened in fear and realization as Julian's words sank in. She swallowed hard, the gravity of the situation hitting her like a ton of bricks. A mix of anger and desperation flickered across her features as she struggled to maintain her composure in the face of Julian's threat. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, her voice trembling with barely contained panic. "You need me just as much as I need you." As Alexander carried Arya to their bedroom in a bridal style, Arya noticed the intensity in his gaze as he looked at her. She caught glimpses of concern and affection mingling in his eyes, sparking a flutter of uncertainty in her mind. As they reached their bedroom, Arya's thoughts whirled with a mixture of confusion and apprehension, wondering about the true intentions behind Alexander's actions in the dining room. "You can drop me now." "We are no longer in the dining room," Arya said, her voice sounding distant, meaning she thought Alexander had done all of that in the dining room just to make Elena jealous, which means she thought they were just acting. He had kissed her just to make Elena jealous? Alexander looked at her, his expression a mix of confusion and curiosity. "What? Why should I drop you?" he asked, his tone gentle yet probing. Once they were alone in their room, Alexander gently lowered her onto the bed, placing her in a sitting position on his lap, the intimacy of their proximity not lost on either of them. Arya met his gaze, feeling a rush of emotions swirling within her. The closeness between them felt palpable, the chemistry crackling in the air as they shared the intimate space of their bedroom. Swallowing nervously, she struggled to find the right words to express her thoughts. "Weren't we? Just acting?" Arya finally managed to utter, her voice barely above a whisper as she dared to voice her doubts about the authenticity of their interactions. Alexander almost chuckled at her words. "Acting? You really think me kissing you and carrying you was just to show off?" "I feel hurt, Arya," he replied. Arya, maintaining an expressionless face, didn't want to be fooled by his sweet words. "So, what was your reason for doing that?" she asked. With a soft yet earnest tone, Alexander reached out to gently cup Arya's cheek, his thumb brushing against her skin in a tender caress. "Arya, what happened in the dining room was real," he said, his voice steady and unwavering as he met her gaze with sincerity. "Every moment we share is genuine, not just an act." His words were infused with a warmth that seemed to reassure her, his eyes reflecting the depth of his feelings for her. "I understand if it's hard to believe, but I want you to know that I will cherish every moment we spend together," he continued, his thumb tracing a soothing pattern on her cheek. You mean everything to me, and I would never do anything to hurt you. Arya's heart fluttered at Alexander's sincere words, his touch sending a wave of warmth coursing through her veins. As she looked up into his eyes, she found herself searching for the truth hidden within their depths, yearning for the reassurance she so desperately craved. Was this real? Did he really say that? But what about Elena? Alexander, sensing the look of slight doubt on her face, smiled. I know it must be hard to believe my words, and I know you have a lot of questions you seek answers for. Ask and I'll do my best to give you an accurate answer to them. He told her. Arya, seizing the opportunity presented by Alexander's understanding demeanor, was grateful for his willingness to address her concerns with honesty and openness. You're right, Alexander, she acknowledged, her voice tinged with relief as she appreciated his understanding. I do have some questions, and I would really appreciate your honesty. As Alexander smiled, Arya felt a sense of reassurance wash over her, grateful for his patience and understanding. Taking a deep breath, she gathered her courage to voice her questions, her gaze unwavering as she met his eyes. Why did you go to Elena that night? Arya asked, her tone gentle yet inquisitive as she sought to understand his actions. And what exactly happened between you two? She added, her voice tinged with curiosity as she awaited his response. Alexander maintained his smile, his eyes fixed on Arya with a reassuring warmth as he listened attentively to her questions. Her trust in him filled him with a sense of responsibility to address her concerns with honesty and transparency. I understand why you'd want to know, Arya, Alexander began, his voice calm and composed as he prepared to share his side of the story. That night, Elena contacted me claiming to have information about Julian that I wasn't aware of. Naturally, I was curious, so I went to meet her. Pausing for a moment, Alexander met Arya's gaze with sincerity, his expression earnest as he continued. When I arrived at the nightclub where she was, I found her at the bar. We talked for a while, but nothing significant happened between us, he explained, his tone reassuring as he emphasized the innocence of their interaction. Flashback to the night after their wedding. As Alexander retreated to his room after their unexpected lunch together, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions swirled within him. His mind replayed the moments shared with Arya in the kitchen, the playful banter, the subtle flirtation, the unexpected connection that seemed to spark between them. He couldn't deny the undeniable allure she exuded, clad in nothing but his oversized t-shirt, her presence filling the room with a warmth and lightness he hadn't anticipated. Yet, amidst the budding attraction and the playful exchange, a nagging doubt gnawed at the back of his mind. He reminded himself of Arya's past actions, the secrets she harbored, and the deception she had woven around him since their first encounter. She was a woman with a troubled history, a woman who reminded him all too much of someone from his past, a past he had been trying to forget. As he settled into his room, his thoughts drifted back to the conversation they had shared, the easy camaraderie that had formed between them despite the circumstances of their marriage. He couldn't shake off the feeling of familiarity that lingered in her presence, a familiarity that both comforted and unsettled him. Lost in his thoughts, Alexander's musings were interrupted by the shrill ring of his phone, signaling an incoming call from an unknown number. His curiosity piqued. He hesitated for a moment before answering, wondering who could be calling him at this hour. Hello? He greeted, his voice laced with a hint of wariness as he awaited a response from the other end of the line. Alexander's grip tightened on the phone at the sound of Elena's voice, his expression hardening as a surge of resentment washed over him. He hadn't expected to hear from her, especially not now, after all this time. Elena, he replied curtly, his tone devoid of warmth or affection, his guard firmly in place. Elena's chuckle only served to fuel his irritation, her words falling on deaf ears as he braced himself for whatever manipulation she had in store. I can see you never forgot my voice, she said. Alexander didn't say anything. I miss you, Alexander. Elena's voice slurred, her words dripping with a familiar blend of seduction and deceit. Alexander's jaw clenched at the blatant attempt to appeal to his emotions, his resolve hardening as he fought against the memories of their tumultuous past. "I don't have time for this, Elena," he replied sharply, his voice tinged with frustration as he prepared to end the call, when Elena's next words caught him off guard. "I know something about Julian that you don't," she whispered, her tone suddenly sobering, her words dripping with intrigue. A flicker of curiosity ignited within Alexander, his brows furrowing in suspicion as he struggled to decipher her intentions. "What do you mean?" he demanded, his tone guarded as he braced himself for whatever revelation she claimed to hold. "Exactly what I said," Elena replied. Elena's response was cryptic, her words teasing, yet laden with a sense of urgency that left Alexander feeling unsettled. Alexander's curiosity flickered to life, his brows furrowing in suspicion. Despite his better judgment, a part of him couldn't help but wonder what secrets she claimed to possess about his brother. But he quickly pushed aside any thoughts of trust, reminding himself of the betrayal he had endured at her hands in the past. "There is nothing you know about my brother that I don't," Alexander retorted sharply, his voice tinged with disdain as he braced himself for whatever manipulation she had in store. But Elena's response only served to deepen his suspicions. "Not this one, Alex." "Julian has a secret he wants no one to know," she teased, her words like a tantalizing lure, tempting him to take the bait. Alexander's jaw tightened, his mind raced with possibilities, his thoughts consumed by the implications of her words. Could Julian be hiding something from him? And if so, what did Elena hope to gain by revealing it? He knew he should hang up, should walk away from whatever game she was playing. But curiosity gnawed at him, urging him to dig deeper, to uncover the truth she claimed to hold. With a sense of resignation, Alexander agreed to meet her, his resolve hardening as he steeled himself for whatever deception awaited him. He would go to the nightclub, but he would tread cautiously, wary of falling into her trap once again. A few moments later, as Alexander drove through the city streets, the night enveloped him in a blanket of darkness, the distant glow of streetlights casting flickering shadows across the pavement. His Lamborghini cut through the silent night with a low hum, the cool evening air streaming through the open windows as he navigated the familiar route to the nightclub. Pulling up in front of the bustling establishment, Alexander's eyes swept over the neon-lit facade of the Tropic Thunder, the vibrant colors and flashing lights illuminating the night sky. People bustled in and out of the entrance, their laughter and chatter mingling with the pulsating beat of music that throbbed from within. Stepping out of his car, Alexander cast a wary glance around the area, his senses on high alert for any signs of danger or unwanted attention. The streets were alive with activity, but he saw no familiar faces lurking in the shadows, no prying eyes watching his every move. Satisfied that he was not being followed, Alexander strode purposefully towards the entrance of the nightclub, the pounding bass of the music growing louder with each step. He passed through the doors and into the dimly lit interior, the air thick with the scent of sweat and alcohol as bodies writhed and danced on the crowded dance floor. Navigating his way through the throng of revelers, Alexander made his way towards the bar section, where Elena had indicated she would be waiting. The dimly lit bar was crowded with patrons, their voices rising above the pulsating music as they vied for the attention of the bartenders. Spotting Elena at the far end of the bar, Alexander's jaw clenched with a mixture of anger and resentment at the sight of her. She sat perched on a bar stool, a knowing smirk playing on her lips as she watched him approach. "I knew you would come," she purred, her voice dripping with arrogance and self-assurance. "You can't stay away from me, can you?" Alexander's eyes narrowed at her taunting words, his fists clenched at his sides as he struggled to contain his anger. "You're mistaken if you think I'm here because of you," he retorted, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. "I came here to find out what game you're playing, nothing more." Elena's smirk widened at his response, her gaze flickering with amusement as she leaned in closer. "Oh, Alexander," she crooned, her voice laced with false sweetness. You can try to deny it all you want, but we both know the truth. You still want me, just like you always have. Alexander's temper flared at her audacity, his resolve hardening as he met her gaze with a steely glare. You're delusional if you think I have any desire for you, he snapped, his voice dripping with contempt. You're nothing but a manipulative liar, and I want nothing to do with you. Elena's smirk faltered at his harsh words, her eyes narrowing with a flash of anger before she quickly regained her composure. Rising from her seat, she took a step towards him, her movements calculated and predatory. We'll see about that, Alexander, she hissed, her tone tinged with malice. You may think you can resist me, but deep down you know you'll always come back to me. I'll be waiting. Alexander's patience wore thin as Elena continued to provoke him with her taunts and insinuations. His jaw clenched with frustration, and he took a step closer to her, his eyes ablaze with intensity. I didn't come here to play your games, Elena, he growled, his voice low and menacing. I came here for answers, so stop with the nonsense and tell me what you know. His words were laced with a steely resolve, his gaze unwavering as he locked eyes with her, daring her to defy him further. He had no time for her manipulative tactics or her attempts to rile him up. All he wanted was the truth, and he wouldn't rest until he got it. Elena's chuckle resonated in the dimly lit nightclub, a sound that sent a wave of irritation through Alexander. Ignoring his demand for answers, she closed the distance between them with a predatory grace, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made him stiffen. Actions speak louder than words, Alexander, she murmured, her voice low and seductive as she reached up to gently caress his cheek. Why waste time with explanations when we can indulge in other pleasures? Before Alexander could react, Elena's lips met his in a forceful kiss, catching him off guard with the intensity of her passion. It was a calculated move, designed to distract him from his questions and pull him into her web of deceit once more. For a fleeting moment, Alexander was taken aback by the audacity of her actions, his disdain for her evident in the way he stiffened against her touch. But as the kiss deepened, he felt a surge of anger and betrayal welling up inside him, a reminder of the pain and heartache she had caused him in the past. Pushing her away with a forceful hand, Alexander broke the kiss, his eyes flashing with a mixture of fury and contempt. Enough, Elena, he growled, his voice laced with a steely resolve. You disgust me, he retorted, his voice dripping with disdain. I have a wife now, and you're nothing but a distant memory, an unwelcome one at that. His words were laced with contempt, a stark contrast to the tender affection he once held for her. Elena's attempts to manipulate him had only served to fuel his anger, reminding him of the betrayal and heartache she had inflicted upon him in the past. Flashback continues. Elena's surprise was evident in the widening of her eyes, her confidence faltering in the face of Alexander's unwavering resolve. She had expected him to succumb to her advances, to fall back into old patterns of longing and desire at the mere touch of her lips. But what she encountered instead was a man transformed, a man who refused to be swayed by her manipulations. As she gazed into his eyes, Elena felt a pang of unease creeping into her chest, a realization dawning upon her that perhaps Alexander wasn't the same man she had once known. The Alexander she remembered was a lover boy, willing to bend over backward to please her, to forgive her every transgression without question. But the man standing before her now was different, stronger, more determined, and utterly immune to her charms. For a moment, doubt flickered in Elena's mind, a seed of uncertainty planted by Alexander's unexpected reaction. Was he truly over her, as he claimed? Or was this newfound resolve merely a facade, a mask to hide the lingering pain and longing that still resided within him? Pushing aside her doubts, Elena summoned all her cunning and allure, determined to regain control of the situation. With a coy smile, she reached out to gently trace her fingers along Alexander's jawline, her voice dripping with honeyed sweetness as she spoke. Alexander, darling, she purred, her tone laced with seduction. You know you can't resist me. We have a connection that transcends time and space, a bond that can't be broken by mere words or actions. But even as she spoke, Elena couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty that gnawed at her insides. There was something different about Alexander, something that made her question everything she thought she knew about him. And as she looked into his eyes, she couldn't help but wonder if perhaps she had underestimated him, if perhaps he was stronger than she had ever imagined. But Alexander remained steadfast, his expression unyielding as he met her gaze with unwavering determination. He was no longer the man she once knew, the man who had been willing to sacrifice everything for her love. He was someone new, someone stronger, someone who refused to be controlled by his past or his emotions. And as Elena watched him walk away, a sense of loss washed over her, mingling with the bitterness of rejection. For the first time in years, she felt truly alone, her grip on Alexander slipping through her fingers like sand. And as she stood alone in the dimly lit nightclub, she couldn't help but wonder if she had lost him for good. No, it can't be. It's not possible. There is no way I can afford to lose him. I need him to get Julian off my back. Instead of thinking about how I feel after rejection, I should look for a way to have him back, Elena said to herself. Her determination burned brighter than ever, fueled by the sting of rejection and the desire to reclaim what she believed was rightfully hers. As Alexander walked away, she gritted her teeth, her resolve hardening as she vowed to win him back, no matter the cost. With a flick of her hair and a calculated smile, Elena straightened her posture, steeling herself for the challenge ahead. She refused to accept defeat, refused to let Alexander slip through her fingers without a fight. He may have walked away for now, but she knew that their story was far from over. As the pulsating rhythm of the nightclub surrounded her, Elena's mind raced with plans and schemes, each one more cunning than the last. She would use every weapon in her arsenal, every trick in the book, to ensnare Alexander once again. For Elena, this was just the beginning. She would stop at nothing to win back the man she believed belonged to her. Consequences be damned. And as she disappeared into the throng of dancers, a dangerous glint sparked in her eyes, a silent promise of the battle to come. Flashback ends. Presently, in Harrington's castle. Arya's eyes glistened with hurt as she processed Alexander's confession. You kissed her? Her voice trembled with a mixture of disbelief and pain. Alexander's expression softened, remorse evident in his eyes. Yes, Arya, I did kiss her, he admitted, his voice laced with regret. But believe me when I say it means nothing. I made a mistake, allowing myself to be drawn into her web of manipulation. I know I was foolish to fall into her trap, but I promise you, it won't happen again. If I could go back, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have gone to meet her. His words were earnest, his resolve unwavering as he sought forgiveness in Arya's gaze. He reached out to gently take Arya's hand in his, seeking comfort in their connection. I know I've hurt you, and for that, I'm truly sorry. You deserve better than this, and I promise to do everything in my power to make it up to you, he said. These past few days with you have been incredibly meaningful to me. I've come to realize how much you mean to me, and I don't want anything to jeopardize what we have, he added. As he spoke, Alexander's eyes held a mixture of remorse and determination. I know I've made mistakes, but I want to make things right. I want to earn your trust and show you that I'm committed to us, to our marriage. Can you forgive me, Arya? Arya's heart wavered between hurt and understanding as she listened to Alexander's confession. On one hand, she couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy at the thought of him kissing another woman, especially someone from his past like Elena. But on the other hand, she admired his honesty and vulnerability in sharing the truth with her, even if it meant admitting to his own mistakes. As Alexander reached out to hold her hand, Arya felt a rush of warmth flood through her, a sense of reassurance in his touch. Despite the turmoil of emotions swirling within her, she found solace in the connection they shared, in the sincerity of his words and actions. You're right, Arya replied softly, her voice tinged with a mixture of emotions. What matters is that you're here now, with me, and that we can move forward together. She squeezed his hand gently, offering him a small smile of forgiveness. These past few days have been eye-opening, to say the least. But I'm glad we're able to talk about everything openly and honestly. It means a lot to me. As she spoke, Arya couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude towards Alexander for being so forthcoming with her, for allowing her to see the depths of his heart and soul. At that moment, she realized just how much she valued their relationship, how much she cared for him despite the challenges they faced. And as for Elena, she continued, her tone firm yet forgiving, I trust you, Alexander. I know you wouldn't intentionally hurt me, and I believe you when you say that nothing significant happened between you two. With those words, Arya felt a weight lift off her shoulders, a sense of peace settling over her as she embraced the truth of their bond. In Alexander's arms, she found the strength to let go of her insecurities and fears, to embrace the love and trust that blossomed between them. Alexander's heart swelled with gratitude as he listened to Arya's words, feeling a profound sense of relief wash over him. Her forgiveness was like a balm to his soul, soothing the ache of his past mistakes and filling him with renewed hope for their future together. I'm so grateful for your understanding, Arya, Alexander replied, his voice filled with sincerity and warmth. You have no idea how much it means to me to have your forgiveness and trust. You have no idea how much it means that you told me the truth, Arya replied, then sighed. It's been one hell of a day. I apologize for today, Arya, Alexander said sincerely, his gaze softening as he met her eyes. It wasn't my intention to bring up past matters. You must be tired after all the drama that unfolded. Arya arched an eyebrow inquisitively, prompting Alexander to stumble over his words. I meant after dealing with the accusation at work and Elena's intrusion, he corrected himself hastily, hoping to smooth over his mistake. Arya nodded understandingly, her expression softening with empathy. I appreciate your concern, Alexander, she replied, her voice gentle yet firm. I may have felt wronged, but I believe I handled the situation as best as I could. The thought of what happened today in his company and to his wife made him angry. He had a plan to reveal who had done this to Arya, but he would tell her later. Right now, she must rest. Alexander nodded in agreement, acknowledging her resilience in the face of adversity. You handled it admirably, he remarked, a hint of pride in his tone. Now, perhaps you should get some rest. It's been a long day. Just then, a gentle breeze swept through the room, causing the curtains to billow as a sign of the impending rain. Alexander glanced towards the open window, a thoughtful expression crossing his features. Looks like it's going to rain, he observed, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. How about we cuddle up with the lights off and let the sound of the rain lull us to sleep? Cuddle up? Arya thought. Arya's eyes lit up with warmth at the suggestion, a sense of comfort washing over her. That sounds perfect, she agreed, a soft smile gracing her lips. Thank you, Xander. As they settled into bed, the soothing sound of raindrops tapping against the window filled the room, creating a peaceful ambiance. In the darkness, they found solace in each other's arms, the tension of the day melting away. This is so cozy, Arya thought. In the quiet embrace of the night, Alexander turned to Arya, his voice gentle yet resolute. I have a perfect idea to take your mind off everything that's happened, he whispered, his breath warm against her skin. How about a dinner date tomorrow night? Just the two of us. Arya's heart fluttered at the suggestion, a smile spreading across her face. I would love that, she replied, her voice filled with anticipation. It's a date. He meant it when he said he would do everything to make it up to her. As Arya drifted off to sleep, she snuggled up in Alexander's arms, finding comfort and security in his embrace. The rhythmic sound of rain tapping against the window served as a lullaby, soothing her weary mind and easing her into a peaceful slumber. Meanwhile, Alexander's thoughts were consumed by the events of the day. His mind raced with questions about Elena's sudden reappearance and her connection to Julian. There was something off about their interaction, something that didn't sit right with him. He was determined to uncover the truth, to protect Arya from any potential harm. And as for Isabella, if she dared do that to his wife, then he would do worse than that to her. Alexander gently caressed Arya's hair, and he couldn't help but marvel at the depth of his feelings for her. Cuddling with her was more than just an excuse. It was a moment of intimacy and connection that he cherished deeply. After the weekend, and when they got home, Alexander made a silent promise to himself that he would make sure they started sharing a room, and that was if Arya agreed to it. As they lay together in the darkness, Alexander made a silent vow to himself. He would do whatever it took to keep Arya safe and happy, to make up for his past mistakes and build a future filled with love and trust. With that resolve in his heart, Alexander closed his eyes and allowed himself to drift off into a peaceful sleep. The following day, Arya's hands nervously sifted through her wardrobe, her brow furrowed in deep concentration as she searched for the perfect outfit. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, swirling with excitement and nervousness at the prospect of her first dinner date with Alexander. As Jessica entered the room, her presence elicited a sigh of relief from Arya, who welcomed the distraction from her internal turmoil. "Hey, Jessica." Arya greeted her friend with a smile, though the worry in her eyes was unmistakable. "I'm glad you're here. I need your help." Jessica's eyes sparkled with curiosity as she took in Arya's frazzled appearance. "Of course, Arya. What's on your mind?" Arya's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she confessed her dilemma. "It's Alexander," she began, her voice tinged with uncertainty. He's taking me on a dinner date tonight, and I have no idea what to wear." Jessica's expression softened with understanding as she listened to Arya's confession. "Ah, I see," she replied with a knowing smile. "Well, lucky for you, you have your very own fashion consultant right here." As Arya's worried gaze met Jessica's reassuring one, a sense of relief washed over her. Maybe she wasn't alone in this after all. "Oh my, you're in love with my brother," Jessica suddenly exclaimed. But as Jessica's words sunk in, Arya's face paled with shock, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Wait, what?" she stammered, her voice filled with incredulity. "In love with Alexander? No, that's not possible. I mean, sure, he's a great guy and all, but love? I don't think so." Jessica chuckled at Arya's denial, shaking her head in amusement. "Oh, Arya," she teased gently, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "You can try to deny it all you want, but it's written all over your face. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about." Arya would take a moment to ponder Jessica's words, her mind swirling with uncertainty and doubt. Could it be true? Was she truly in love with Alexander? I don't know, Jessica," Arya admitted hesitantly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "I mean, yes, I care for him deeply and spending time with him has been amazing. But love? I'm not so sure." Jessica would give her a knowing smile, shaking her head gently. "Oh, Arya," she chuckled, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "Like I said, trust me, it's written all over your face. The way you light up when you talk about him, the way your eyes linger on him when you think no one's watching. You're head over heels for him whether you realize it or not. But what if he doesn't feel the same way?" Arya's voice wavered with uncertainty, her insecurities bubbling to the surface. "What if it's all just one-sided? Do you really think Alexander feels the same way about me?" Jessica's smile softened with reassurance as she reached out to gently squeeze Arya's hand. "Arya, trust me when I say that Alexander cares for you deeply," she replied earnestly. "I've seen the way he looks at you. It's like you're the only person in the world that matters to him. He's completely smitten with you, whether he admits it or not. And who knows, maybe tonight will be the perfect opportunity for you to see just how much he cares." Arya's heart fluttered at Jessica's words, a glimmer of hope sparking within her. Could it be true? Could Alexander really be in love with her? But what if I'm wrong? Arya's voice wavered with uncertainty, her insecurities bubbling to the surface. What if it's all just wishful thinking? Jessica reached out to gently squeeze Arya's hand, her expression filled with warmth and understanding. Arya, trust your heart, she urged gently. Love isn't always easy, and it's normal to have doubts. But deep down, you know how you feel. And if Alexander makes you happy, if being with him fills your heart with joy, then that's all that matters. With Jessica's words echoing in her mind, Arya felt a sense of clarity wash over her. Maybe she didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing for certain. She cared for Alexander more than she had ever cared for anyone else.